Hi guys, it's Samuel Larsen here, and today's video we're going to cover some of the A/B testing prioritization tools. So these are very handy when you have done an audit or an analysis of your website and you have a list of hypotheses that you want to test, lots of ideas, but not really a clear-cut priority of where to start. And we're going to cover 4 models here, and these are more than you need to get started. So there's the PI model, which is potential importance is. Then there will be the ICE model, ICE number 1, that will be impact confidence is. ICE 2, impact cost effort. And finally, a little bit more of a complex model, the one that I personally prefer, the PXL model. But we're going to cover all of these very shortly. But first, let's talk about why we would use a prioritization framework in the beginning. Personally, coming from the agency side, I've noticed that using this sort of prioritization frameworks really helps with the shareholder buy-in and also helps with retention, since people actually realize what is a great idea and what is not. And oftentimes you see people, they fall in love with their ideas, and with these kind of frameworks you can actually kind of like combat that highest paid opinion a little bit and really provide a ranking between these different ideas, because everybody loves their own ideas, but oftentimes they're not really worth all that much. Now with this you kind of have a system, and you are not just doing things randomly. So if you're running an optimization program in-house, or you're working with a client, or even in your own e-commerce company, like where you have people working for, this is a great way to build trust between different shareholders and also empower people to come up with their own testing ideas, build transparency on your tests, and really help manage these tests as well. Now, what is the core idea between this and behind prioritization of tests? It really comes down to 2 things. On the one hand, you have the value of the test, but there's a balancing factor, which is the effort that it takes to complete. So ideally, of course, we would do high value test first that would require 0 effort. So that's the ideal case, but oftentimes this is not the case, and it's not that easy. So it is about finding the best combination between effort and value and then doing those tests. But if you're just randomly trying to prioritize, you probably end up with those ideas that you personally like, and it won't be a really scientific method to rank these. So what we want to do is really get this value and effort right, and then the rest will be easy. Now, once you start ranking these, you'll typically find that ranking value might be a little bit harder than ranking effort, because if you have a web design background, you have a web designer, you can just ask like how easy this would be to implement, and you can get a pretty good idea. But when it comes to value, we are very much swayed by our own opinions. So you might rank those tests higher than that you actually like, and that can be a big problem. So this kind of framework is a way to justify your tests. So let's take a look at the couple first frameworks, and after that you'll get a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about. So here is the PI model. it's consists of 3 factors really: potential, importance, ease, and every one of these factors is ranked from 1 to 10. So once you have this, you will form an average score, and this can be listed so that the biggest score is the first, second biggest the second, and so forth. This way you can have a long list of ideas, and the top one will automatically be ranked first. So you don't really need to care about the idea number 172, for example, because you'll basically never even see it on this list. It just exists there somewhere, but you'll be focusing on the top ideas. Now, a problem with these more simplistic models, this Pi ICE version 1, ICE version 2, is that they are very swayed by opinion still. So how do you rank potential? It's very subjective, and while it's an easy tool to rank, it's very much something that is based on opinion still, because we can't really say that a certain test would have a high potential before we look at it more objectively. So potential is really like about how big of a change it makes on how important of a page, and ease is how easy it is to implement. So the actual effort is 1/3 here on this model. All right, let's take a look at the ICE version 1 model for balance. So it's quite a similar model. You're looking for impact, which is the potential here. It's really the same thing. And the idea here is a little bit of a better wording really, because impact communicates that this will affect the end user. So it is both the value of the page and also the value on behavior. Basically, if it doesn't change user behavior, it's a useless test. So that's a good ranking there. Now, the second thing here is confidence. So how sure we are that this will actually provide improvement. So if we are we have a lot of confidence on this test, then we'll probably get 10 for that. And ease is the same thing here in the Pi model, same exact thing. So how easy the test is to implement. Now, when we compare Pi model and ICE model, we have potential, importance here, we have impact, confidence here, and it's a very similar model in a sense that it's very much based on opinion again. So 2/3 of this is basically your opinion. And this can be problematic because you in general would like your models to be as objective as possible. So we tend to like our own ideas, and we are swayed by opinions, and that's why it can be dangerous if we are actually ranking this ourselves. So ideally we look for a little bit of more of a complicated models that provide us with objective scoring scenarios. Now, these are really good for ranking tests quickly. I'm going to show you the ICE version 2 model that we're going to check next. So if we have a high impact, high effort thing here, that would be one where we could validate our hypothesis. And then we could even maybe do it in a way that doesn't require so much effort. And then once we have done that, we could actually roll out the full thing. Now, if it's a high impact, so let's say this would be a 5, this would be a 1, then this would be just kind of like just do it category, where it doesn't cost you anything to change it. So you might as well go ahead and test it. Then if it's low impact, so let's say it's 1, effort is 5, you can really just forget it. In this model the effort would be 1 because it's not deducting, it's just 1 means it's a lot of effort. So this is forget it test. It doesn't move the needle and it's a lot of work. Now if the effort is low but the value is like there somewhere in the middle, so let's say it's like a 3 or 3 or 3, 2, something like this, then you can move to this test once you have the priorities, the resources. But if you're running a smaller site, you probably wouldn't want to do this test. So let's continue with the ICE model versus version 2. It's again very similar to the other 2 models, but we have our impact and effort here, just like we have got used to, so potential is impact effort. But here we have the cost. So this is counting more for that that actual development cost, which might be more useful for smaller sites because you don't have the necessarily in-house developers working on these things all the time. And the thing I like about this model here is that it does provide you with the actual scoring numbers. So these are a little bit better because our brains are not always reacting to 1 to 5 scales so well. So if you actually think that the difference between 3 and 2 might often be a little bit vague, but here, since you have this kind of like wording, that makes it helpful, makes it easier to understand. But at the end of the day, like, we would want to be really objective with all of our tests, and the problem here is that these models are very subjective. Even though they're easy to use and they're easy to rank, everybody can understand them, they are still quite problematic in that sense. So let's jump into the last model, which is quite a bit more complicated than the others. And I'm going to share with you exactly how it works. So this is the PXL Prioritization Framework by Conversion Excel. So this is a test ranking model that we can use for our A/B tests that they have tried to make as objective as possible. So basically it consists a lot of yes/no questions, and those will provide us with the final result score. So here we can see it a little bit better. So here we have our hypothesis, then we just start going through the model and ranking it. So about the fold, yes. Have we found this by the user testing? Is it actually consisting of something that is based on like more of a tangible finding? So let's say in this case it's not. And have we found it through some kind of user feedback, surveys, polls, interviews? Yeah, maybe we say like we have really found very much strong evidence. So let's give it a couple, and then since it's above the fold, it's very noticeable. Oftentimes I actually don't do this thing here, mouse tracking heat maps, but it's fine because what we have is that none of these tests will have it, so that's why it's still a fair thing. Then ease of implementation. Notice how this is probably for a bigger site here. So if something takes you 2 days to implement, you can really start minusing the points. but it's a framework that you can then modify to your own needs. And a lot of these things are very self-explanatory. So you can just fill it out, and at the end of the day, like what you're looking to do is the K model, K column, and rank these tests. And this is really useful because with this you have a clear plan, and all it really takes is filling these blanks in. So you can fill a test here in 30 seconds and have an automatic prioritization. And then you can share it internally with your team, and everybody will know exactly where we are. And this way people also like to suggest their own tests. But I will finish with this. At the end of the day, the particular framework doesn't really matter all that much. What is important is that you are using one, because if you're not using one, you're just shooting in the dark, doing random things, and random things don't really produce your results. All right, so hopefully that was a helpful lead for these prioritization frameworks. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.